question. Take 6 or commission?
No, you ready to move on? We're not gonna get silly.
Welcome. What's up, y'all, to TechDontSleep.com podcast. You know my name, Bill McCleskey, in the building with my co-host
Eddie Jones. We are here.
Yes, and we have a special guest this afternoon, Dr. Cedric Dent.
Yes.
Doctor in the building. And I'm telling you, I'm a big fan of the Take 6, which you were formerly a member of Take 6,
yes,
and you're now a professor of music theory at MTSU, right? Middle Tennessee State University.
At Middle Tennessee State.
Awesome. So we're gonna dive in conversation with Dr. Cedric Dent. But before we do that, we actually have a couple of questions we want to ask you. Eddie, did you want to roll with this, man, or did you want me to?
Go ahead. I think I'll do it.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so the game is called Got 5 on it. So basically, you have 5 seconds to answer each question.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good luck. I never do well in games, man. I'll be honest with you.
It's gonna be fun. Trust me. All right. First question: 8-track or vinyl?
Vinyl.
Analog or digital?
Digital.
All right. Jazz or big band?
They can be both. Do you mean small ensemble jazz or big band ensemble
he
jazz?
getting deep on me.
Solo or big band. That's what we should say.
Okay, yeah.
Solo artist or big band.
Man, that's a draw for me, man. I can start naming solo artists and then I can start naming big bands and sway myself either way.
So we'll say it's a tie then.
But that was a tie for me, man.
All right. Sam Cooke or Marvin Gaye?
Wow. That's hard. My God.
That's a good one.
That is a good one. I'm going to say Sam Cooke.
All right. Now we're going to switch. Jamaica or Puerto Rico in terms of travel?
I haven't been to Puerto Rico, so I'm going to say Puerto Rico because I want to go.
All right. Instagram or Facebook?
I'm old school, so Facebook.
All right. Desktop, laptop, or tablet?
Laptop.
Okay. Here's a good one. Leonard Bernstein or Quincy Jones?
That's a tough one. But Quincy Jones gets the edge for me.
All right. If money was no object, what would be the very first thing you'd do right now?
Retire.
Okay. Bass clef or treble clef?
Bass clef. I'm going to say bass clef.
All right.
Simply because, I sang in the lower.
That's right. All right. If you had to delete all but 3 apps on your smartphone, which ones would you keep?
Which ones would I keep? Wow. What do I use most? My iTunes, I guess, or my music app. I probably would keep Facebook. I do a fair amount of promoting of things on social media, and I would say my email.
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. Who was your favorite musician growing up?
My favorite musician growing up. Probably somebody that most people have never heard of. Guy by the name of Shelton Kilby III.
I know who he is. All right.
Wow.
All right.
And I don't. Okay.
Yeah. He's a legend. Okay, here we go. Breakfast, lunch, or dinner?
I'm going to say breakfast.
Okay. If you could live anywhere in the world for a year, where would it be?
Probably Hawaii.
Okay. Who do you admire the most?
Are we talking about Just anybody in the
Anybody,
world?
yeah.
Oh, then it's my wife.
Oh.
Great answer.
Great answer.
Love it.
Listener or talker?
Listener.
Okay. Alexa or Siri?
Siri.
All right. Introvert or extrovert?
Introvert.
And the very last question. Take 6 or commission?
No, you ready to respond? We're not gonna get silly.
But as a member, formerly a member of Take 6, you guys were fans of Commission, right? Because Commission was out before you guys
We were.
got on.
We were.
So,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. One of the first concerts I took my wife to,
Really?
we were still dating, was a Commission concert in Detroit where we grew up.
yeah, and Commission had about 15 members in the group, didn't it?
About 20, 25.
It was a choir.
Well, yeah, I mean they always had like 4 singers and then their rhythm section, and then over time members left and some
Yeah.
new ones came in.
It's all good. It's all good. All right. Well, yeah, I know you had to say Take 6. You know what I mean? So, Dr. Dent, what we usually do is we try to pull out a couple articles to discuss something relative to your expertise, but also tie it into technology too. And so we pulled out a couple of articles here, and one that I want to start with says 10 technologies that changed music. And I thought this was pretty interesting. Now, Eddie, I just sent this link to you like 5 minutes ago. So. But hey, I thought this was cool. I'm just going to go down the list right quick, y'all. So it's number 1 is the phonograph, which was invented apparently in the 1800s, 1877 by Thomas Edison. Okay. Number 2 is the electric guitar. That changed music, right? Number 3, multi-tracking recording.
Yeah.
So, okay. Next up is the effects pedal, right? So where you can do the echo or reverb and all that good stuff. Next, synthesizers.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
And next up, the turntable. This was my favorite. The turntable. Okay. So you probably still got a turntable at your house, don't you? Can you talk about that? I know how your dad had a turntable.
My dad, yeah.
Okay, you still got a turntable?
I do, but I mean, DJs brought it back.
Oh, that's true. That's true. And vinyl is definitely,
and along with vinyl, yeah. I mean, so that has come full circle.
All right, check this one out. The Walkman. Hey, I saw somebody the other day running up the street with a Walkman. I was like,
wait,
wow.
like seriously,
like they had a
Yeah, man, I'm old enough to have gone through that. I had a
I don't
Walkman,
think- yeah.
and then I traded that in for the Discman.
right.
The CDs.
Yeah, you thought you were big time when you did that.
See, I don't think our producers back here, I don't think they
Oh,
know
no.
what a cassette, they don't know what that is. Barbie does, but
Oh, no
Chloe's
question.
here, they
No
don't
question.
know.
Yeah, she's like, why does a Walkman? All right, so next up, this is the musical instrument digital interface.
Oh man, yeah.
MIDI.
MIDI, yeah.
So, okay. And then we got auto-tune.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so auto-tune. Now, auto-tune is where, like, if people are off or they tone deaf or something, it helps them get on key. Is that what that is?
It can be used for that, yes. But it became so universal that it actually sort of changes the sound of the voice when you sing into it. So even people who don't need to rely on it to sing into use it anyway, because it became a type of sound
Gotcha.
in recordings.
Okay.
Pretty much everybody's doing it nowadays, especially in rap.
Yeah, it's become
Now that makes
become
sense
used.
in hip hop, though.
Yeah.
It's now in effect.
Gotcha.
That
So like
it's kind of like
Drake.
reverb. If you put if you don't have reverb on a recording, it sounds so strange to a lot of people.
Wow.
Autotune has become one of those kinds of effects that you can tell the era that something was recorded because of how they use autotune.
Yeah. Wow, that's deep. Okay. Next up, we got the personal computer. Okay, so I guess they're relating this to DJs started using the Mac and all that type of stuff. And I think that's the last one, the personal computer. All right, cool. So I just thought that was interesting, you know, kind of the progression of technology on, you know, how people are recording or how music impacts us as music lovers.
Right.
Sure.
And you've probably seen that big time too, right? You know, because you guys started recording with Take 6 back in the 80s, or you were, I mean, you were a musician.
I mean, in the late 80s when we started recording, man, we started recording right around the time recording studios were beginning to transition from analog to digital.
Okay.
And it was such a heated debate. I mean, so we recorded in both arenas using both technologies. Analog at the time, I mean, I guess, you know, things are different now because technology continues to evolve. But when it first came in, analog still had a warmth about it. There was a warmth in the sound, and there was sort of a mechanical kind of a sound with digital. And you needed a lot of more outboard gear, you know, effects to sort of warm up the sound.
Oh wow! Okay.
So a lot of people, you know, a lot of people stayed with analog long after digital became the primary way to.
But analog, I'm assuming, was it just more equipment, or is just more of a hassle to record, or was digital easy to send files and stuff like that, or what was
at first, digital, as I recall, you could it was non-destructive editing that you could do with digital. See, with analog, man, you were really still dealing with tape.
With tape, yeah.
You know, kind of like, you know, a professional version of the cassette, and you could record on it. You know, and you really, you know, engineers had to work like surgeons, man. If you needed to
cut that tape,
you actually had to cut and splice tape together and things like that. And digital allowed you to be able to erase and go back and forth without having to cut tape.
Right, gotcha.
That was the first step, you know. I mean, now, you know, even digital has, of course, moved on from using digital tape, basically. Tape that is connected, you know, or edited digitally.
Well, I just know, like, and you got to understand. So I just got to tell you this quick story. When I was growing up, can I tell a story?
Go ahead, man. Go ahead. Break it down for us.
They always trying to crack on me, man. You know what I'm saying? When I was growing up, I was fortunate because my parents, you know, we would travel to see my grandparents and stuff, and they would play 3 cassettes in the car: Luther, Whitney, and Take 6. Right?
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was
That's
like,
a big Luther to Take 6. That's.
I mean, Luke, you know what I'm saying? Big Luther, by the way.
Big Luther.
So I became a Take 6 fan like when I was really young, but I noticed a different sound between the first album, like was it Spread Love or is that it? And the second one, So Much to Say.
Right.
So and I'm talking about just how, because you made me think of that when you start talking about analog and digital.
Sure.
So was that the impact of that?
You know, I don't know that there was as much of a difference in terms of technology between those first two records. I think it had more to do with who was producing. We were a self-produced group.
Okay.
And the first album was produced by 3 of the guys who were like the original members before the group even became Take 6. They were still singing in college. The second on the second album, the rest of the group had more input in the production.
Okay.
And it's interesting because that first record, the 3 guys that produced the first record were the 3 guys that sang the top 3 parts.
Okay.
So it's a little more top heavy.
Skewed to them, yeah.
You hear a lot more of the bass and baritone in that second record because we were in the control booth and in the mixing booth when we were mixing that record. And because I sang baritone, I tended to gravitate to
Right.
I need to hear more of me.
Oh, no doubt. Okay.
And so I think that was probably the biggest difference.
Okay. Yeah, because I can. You know what I thought, like in high school and stuff. I was like, oh, they got more money now. You know what I'm saying? I know. But no, I can tell the difference. You know, it's interesting to hear that, and I still appreciate kind of, I don't know if the authenticity, so to speak, of that first project. You know. As well.
And I know we'll probably get into it more, but wasn't the first album cut live somewhere? Wasn't it like at a church or somewhere that you guys recorded?
No. Okay. We recorded. The process was pretty much the same.
Okay.
I mean, Take Six. You know, we all stand in a sort of a half circle.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has their own mic, and we're recording a phrase at a time.
Okay.
You know, and we're just running it over and over until. Till everybody's got it right. The thing that we figured out we could do as we went along from record to record was not everybody has to feel like their part is perfect before we all move on. If this guy feels like his part is solid, he can rest while this guy over here is still
keep going,
still recording that same phrase until it's right.
Okay.
But the other thing that probably makes the second record a little different from the first is we started using sampling like every artist did. You know, hip hop artists were like probably the biggest in that, and the way you can tell that the industry was changing, when we recorded our first record, there was no department at the major record label called sample clearance. By the time we started working on our second album, because so many artists were sampling other artists and other recordings, and the record company was trying to keep up with copyrights, you know, making sure that there weren't copyright infringements going on. They actually invented a department that before they released your record, you had to list every song and list any artist or any record that you sampled and put into your recording. That became a whole department at Warner Brothers where we were signed. And so that became a thing.
Who did you guys sample in the second project, and why did you start sampling?
That's a good question. We didn't actually sample other artists. We actually use sample libraries that of sounds, specific sounds.
Okay.
Like you know, we might have the sound of a telephone. You know,
gotcha.
That we sampled. You know, that we, you know, and those sample libraries would be on CDs, and we could just go through a CD looking for a sound. Like sometimes it might be just a whole list of laughs, people laughing, different kinds of laugh.
All that was on the CD.
Yeah, all that would be on the CD, and we would just say, you know what? Let's throw this laugh in the middle of this thing, you know. And there was a song on So Much to Say called "Sundays on the Way," where you could probably hear us using funny little sounds.
So that wasn't y'all; that was samples.
Some of it was us. Some of it was samples.
Okay. Yeah, because I think I need to.
But all of the singing now was just us. Now, let's not. Don't let me mislead you. If there was, you know, a clank sound, that might be sample. But if it was singing,
it was
we sang everything, and that was one of the things we pride ourselves in that. You know, we didn't use auto-tune. We didn't actually sample other singers singing our stuff. Yeah, we did everything ourselves.
Okay, so for people who are listening and are not familiar with Take, I don't understand how you can't be familiar with Take Six.
You have to be.
But Take Six is a sextet, right?
Yeah,
six members, and originally was totally a cappella. For the most part, still is an a cappella. Would you say a jazz gospel group?
That's a great way to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So look them up, you know, and be sure to support them. One thing about Take Six that I appreciate is that you guys were always making sounds. Y'all were always making, you know,
Yeah. Vocal percussion became
vocal
a thing.
percussion. Okay, that's what it's called.
That we got into. But you know, what really sort of inspired that for us was our very first major tour was opening for an artist who is passed now, but Al Jarreau.
Yeah.
We were big fans of his, and the first major U.S. tour that we did after the release of our first album was with him, and he always did what they call shed tours every summer, where he went to amphitheaters, those outdoor arenas. Well, we have one here now, a new one.
Yeah, right.
Relatively new.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Ascend.
Ascend.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he toured throughout the summer, and I remember him coming through Nashville. At the time, Ascend wasn't here back then in the late 80s. It was Starwood Amphitheater. And I didn't realize how many of them there were across the country. And I mean, we started in Northern California and weaved our way all the way across the nation, hitting those amphitheaters in this shed tour. And like I said, one of the dates we did was in Nashville, and I hadn't even moved to Nashville yet at the time. And we did like a 33 city tour. All of this to say, Al Jarreau was major when it came to vocal percussion. That was one of the things he did. And opening for him, we just started experimenting with doing sort of mimicking what he was doing and incorporating it into what we did. And so that's how we started doing vocal percussion. Years passed, and then beatboxing became the thing. Vocal percussion sort of morphed into beatboxing. I did most of the vocal percussion, but then when Mervyn Warren, one of the original members, left, and he was replaced by a guy that's almost 10 years younger than me, he was a beatboxer. Joey Killer. He came in and started. He came in and started doing. He took the vocal percussion and made it more of a beatboxing kind of a vibe.
Wow.
And so it evolved. It evolved over time.
No, it's always it's cool. I like when I've been to some of y'all shows and I've seen y'all do the segment where you kind of introduce each member, and I think I saw one time where you were on the keys, and y'all would everybody would go out and do the vocal performance or percussion thing, and somebody would be a trombone or a trumpet or whatever. So no, it's kind of cool. You really
as you
distinguish
see,
yourself.
Bill is clearly a fan.
Oh man, look, dude, I'm telling you,
this is legendary right now.
No doubt. And so all right, so are we going to talk about another one of these articles or what? Are we going to jump into these questions?
Let's jump
into the questions. Go ahead. Let's talk about it.
Go ahead and pull it up because mine is. So actually, we can go ahead and get started. So let's talk about how you started with Take 6. Like, how did you become a part of the group? Because I know that some of the members were actually at Oakwood, and you didn't go to attend Oakwood. So how did that whole marriage?
Oakwood University in Huntsville.
Yeah. It's an interesting story. And I like to share a lot with my students because it has a lot to do with how you network, which is such an important aspect of really any industry. To be successful, you really have to know how to network. And for me, someone gave me a cassette tape that they had recorded on, remember the old boom boxes?
Yeah, my dad had one.
Recorded a live concert of the guys singing at Oakwood College, university now, but at the time it was Oakwood College. I was up in Michigan. A guy who was a student there, who was also from Michigan, he was a student at Oakwood. He had a copy of this cassette. Came home one summer, said, "You got to hear this." I heard it and was like, "Okay, I have to do this." I hadn't heard anything like that before in my life.
You have to do what? What were you?
I have to do what I'm hearing on this cassette.
Gotcha. Okay.
See, what a lot of people don't know when they interview me is that the sound really had already been established before I actually joined the group. No one else had heard it because they were just students.
And it was how many members in that on that recording? It was six of them on the recording?
It was 6 of them on the recording. They were called something else. They were called Alliance at the time.
Okay.
And so I heard for the first time the group on a cassette tape singing live and went, this is where I need to go musically. I started, and I had my own vocal groups in Michigan. I was at the University of Michigan. I was doing my undergrad work there while they worked at Oakland College. But I also had my own vocal groups. One was a family group called, we were a trio called the Dent Family Trio. And then when I heard what they were doing, I expanded my group to have more voices because I need to recreate what I'm hearing.
Right.
What I did was because we were sort of in a network and a denominational, a church network. Oakwood College is a denominational school. It's an Adventist school.
Right.
I'm an Adventist. So it's a small world. So anything that's going on down there at that college, I would hear about it. Because not only was it an Adventist school, it was the only HBCU Adventist school. So anybody that was doing anything that was a black Adventist musician, we always knew what everybody else was doing.
Right.
I had not met the guys in that group, but as soon as I heard what they did, I said, okay, I need to learn what they're doing. I dissected that recording and started recreating some of that sound with my group. We saved up our little money, man, and got one day in the studio, went and did a demo of 2 songs.
Your group in Michigan.
My group in Michigan. To make a long story short, I got a copy of the demo to the guys. Now I didn't tell them that I had even heard what they were doing yet. I just sent them and said, "Look what we're working on."
Yeah.
I immediately get a call from one of the guys. Mervyn Warren called me, dude. You think the way we think. This is uncanny. I still let him keep thinking that. I'm like, oh, you think? Wow, man. What? Well, I guess all great minds. He was like, this has never happened before, man. We've never run into anybody else that's doing similar kind of work that we're doing. I was like, wow, man. Well, maybe we should work together. He was like, that's why I'm calling.
You're a sales professional.
That's why I'm calling. It wasn't until I got an invitation to be in the group that I told him, actually, I heard your stuff, man, and I've been copping your stuff for a while, and so I know what you guys do, and I just wanted you to know that I hear it too.
Wow. But what's interesting about that is, a lot of people probably heard that cassette, right? They saw the performance, so they heard the cassette. And even people who heard it and appreciated it could not duplicate it like you did. You had this.
You had to have an ear to figure out what they were doing.
Yeah,
because it was so new. But that was the attraction for me. That's what pulled me to it. I was thinking nobody else is doing this, and I love it so much. And they're the only ones doing it. I need to be a part of what they're doing.
So if there were 6 people in the group then, who did they kick out?
Well, remember, that's an excellent question.
Somebody got booted.
Well, remember, they're just students.
Okay,
man. So change. Turnover was all the time. They were just singing basically on campus. When a guy would graduate, somebody else would come in.
Yeah.
And when Mervyn called me, 3 guys had just left.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they were looking for 3 more guys.
Okay.
It just so happened I was ready to do something.
Mm-hmm.
With, you know, I was graduating from the University of Michigan the year he called, and I was trying to figure out what am I going to do next. And so I had three things sitting on the table that I was considering. My degree was in vocal music education. Mm-hmm. I had gotten a call from a principal at a high school in Flint, Michigan.
Yeah.
Flint was a rough area, man. It still is to this day. But called and said, "Listen, I'm looking to hire a choir director for my vocal program at my high school." That was sitting on the table. I had already applied to grad school, and I applied to UCLA and had gotten accepted. Because at the time I was thinking about going into film music. I said, well, if I'm going to do film music, I need to be close to Hollywood. That's where they do it. And then I had this call from Murph's, and he said, "Man, we really want you to come down here, man, and see if you can help us put this group back together, man, because we think we have something special, and we really are serious about trying to pursue it professionally." I'm thinking, man, I don't want to move down there and be working at, White Castle while we trying to figure out how this is going to work. That's a conversation we literally had.
Because Take Six, essentially, you're your own businessman, like you're entrepreneurs, so you have to be able to hustle and be able to provide for your family.
Yeah. But
you weren't married at the time, right?
No, at the time, man, I'm just graduating from college.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: I'm the oldest. I'm really one of the oldest guys in the group. Okay. So they all still have a year or two left in college. I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm gonna come down there while y'all are still college students. What am I gonna do? I got a degree now. I need to get a job.
Right.
And so Murph said, "Let me think about it, man." And so, a few weeks go by, he calls back and says, "Listen, man, there's a graduate degree program down here at the University of Alabama that's starting brand new. It's starting this fall in arranging." That was the magic word.
The University of Alabama
in Tuscaloosa.
Okay, which is how far from Huntsville?
Tuscaloosa, it was about a 2.5 hour drive.
Okay.
He said, "Listen, I'm going to apply, get in this program. You come down here, you can apply. We can get student, financial aid.
Yeah.
We'll be in school during the week. On weekends, we'll commute up to Huntsville and rehearse with the guys and see if we can make this sound happen."
Yes.
I did that for 2 years while I was working on the degree, traveling back and forth every weekend, man. 2.5 hour drive. There were times, man, I was so tired. There was a halfway point where there was a little rest area. I know it's dangerous, but I would stop in the middle of the night, man, and go to sleep for about a half hour and get up and finish the drive because I would be so exhausted from trying to do this thing with Take Six and still keep on top of my studies in Tuscaloosa.
So circling back to the demo, was that demo tape the same one that landed in the hands of, was it Jim Ed Norman?
No.
So
that really was a demo. What I got was not a demo. What I got was just some student who would take them singing live in one of the little halls on campus at a student concert. So you can hear everybody loud and screaming in the audience.
But you were able to dissect that from all of that distraction.
Oh yeah. That's awesome. That's a great question. That was a different thing. Before the year, either the year before or early in the year, just before I moved down there, the guys actually did go into a studio and record something professionally. It was not commercially released though. But that's the recording that got into the hands of Jim Ed Norman.
Okay. And then I heard that Kenny Rogers heard that too, right? That's from what Gail Hamilton Basando, she said on her interview with the guy.
She did. I didn't know about that. That was news to me.
Now, who was Jim Ed Norman?
Jim Ed Norman at the time was the president of Warner Brothers here in Nashville.
Okay.
He was signing people like to just sort of set the era for you. He had just signed like Randy Travis. If you know that country artist name. He had signed. He signed another group called Bela Fleck and the Flecktones right around the same time that he signed us. They became really, really big. It was interesting because Bela Fleck was a guy who played jazz banjo, and two of the band members in the Flecktones were Wooten brothers.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard those guys.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Vic Wooten played bass for the Flecktones. And his brother Roy Wooten, known aka Future Man, used to play what he called the drumatar. He was a drummer, but he had created an instrument where he could play drums on an instrument that looked like a guitar. So he could walk around playing drums on a guitar.
Okay. Wow.
But it was a contraption that he created. So they were really eccentric. And our sound was considered similarly an eccentric sound.
Yeah.
So the president at the time was supposed to be just signing country music artists. He was really, I think, visionary at the time because he was signing artists that were doing interesting things that were way outside the mainstream.
Yeah.
Long story short, we did a showcase in Nashville on Music Row where we invited a bunch of music execs, mostly from the Christian music industry. Jim Ed Norman shows up uninvited. Nobody knows who he is. He's a very regular looking guy. He wasn't like dressed in a suit and tie like he was head of a record label. I think he had
No sunglasses.
Yeah, no, man, just we didn't know who he was. The showcase was very sparsely attended. We were disappointed, thinking, why didn't anybody show up? He showed up with the cassette in his pocket.
Oh wow.
And he only had a piece of one song on that cassette. We stand up, still, we're called a group called Alliance. We stand up, we're the first artist on the showcase. He's sitting there, first song we sing is David and Goliath. That's the clip of the song that he had on this cassette.
Wow.
He later told us, I had this cassette in my, I held onto this cassette for about a year wondering who these guys were.
Wow.
And I came to the showcase wondering if you guys were the guys.
Wow. Y'all sing that song.
We sing that song. He knows. He's confirmed that. He gets his confirmation. These are the guys. And a week later, man, we were sitting in his office, man, signing a record deal.
Wow. That's crazy.
And that's how that happened. There are now two different stories about how he got a hold of that tape. Because Gail tells a different story than the story we heard from other people. We had a different story that came from a guy who owned the recording studio that the guys did a lot of work in Huntsville. He says he gave it to a guy who actually was a friend of Jim Ed's, who then gave it to Jim Ed and said, "You got to hear this." Gail has a different version of that story of how it got to Jim Ed.
Right.
I guess now it's moot.
He got it.
He got the tape. That's all that matters to us.
Wow.
Right.
And of course, the
And
rest is history.
Gail was y'all's manager. back then.
Gail Hamilton
Okay.
was our manager at the time.
Okay. No, that's pretty cool. I think that you guys have been a force in the industry for so long, and you know how you have your one-hit wonders or people who are hot, but you guys have been pretty consistent. What do you attribute that to? I know you said y'all all are truly singing on the recordings, but what do you attribute that longevity in the industry to?
First thing, man, I have to say, I've always felt that Take Six was anointed and appointed by God to do what we do.
Yeah.
He put the group. I believe he handpicked each one of the members that started out in this group, man. That's the first thing. The second thing, after you get past that, I used to say to the guys, there are three things that we excel at, man, that nobody else does. that's all self-contained in this group. Any other group that comes close to what we do may have one, may have two of those elements, but they don't have three. And this is the thing. We had one of the baddest bass singers whose range just almost seemed bottomless. And we had a guy who sang on top, Claude, whose voice was so unique. You couldn't tell the difference between whether he was singing in his falsetto or it was his natural voice.
That's his natural voice.
Yeah. He could go so high, but it had this very unique sound. It still had the warmth and airiness of someone who has switched into their falsetto, like Marvin Gaye used to do all the time. That was an incredible sound. And when you put him on top and Vinny in the bass, we had a vocal range that was so wide. No, that was a hard thing to duplicate in other groups. That was the first thing. The second thing is we had an incredible arranger. The guy who really invented the sound of the group, Mark Kibble, he's now nicknamed the Markitect because he's the architect, if you will, of the sound. No one had done this before. Now, I because I'm a music theorist, I can sit down and take it apart and talk about influences. I can point to specific things that I know he listened to.
Right.
But he's the one that pulled it all together. And no one had done that before. The third thing that we had was incredible lead singers. The group was blessed, man, to have this incredible range, a unique sound created by one of the members of the group, and then, again, lead singers, man, who were second to none. And Mark was that too. But he wasn't the only lead singer. But Mark was always fearless. Mark would challenge anybody. Like, once we became really well known, there would be times, man, where Stevie Wonder would be in the audience and would come on stage, and Mark would try to challenge him. I'm like, dude, this is Stevie. Mark didn't care. It would
challenge Stevie.
He's like, well, Mark.
It was like, I can do that too.
Wow.
And that's kind of how. That's how he was, man, and still is to this day. He does not back down from a challenge, and he is one of the most competitive brothers you will ever meet.
Wow.
And so I said to the guys early on in our career, I said, it's going to be a long time before somebody else, another group, comes and dethrones us, because they have to have all three of those elements.
Well, it makes me think about entrepreneurs and building a business. I know when I started my my company, I always thought about what's our unique selling proposition, our USP, or what makes us different, or what competitive advantage do we have.
Sure.
So the fact that you guys were aware of that, and you say, hey, we got these three components that are not easily duplicatable. I mean, that's really key. So that actually makes a lot of sense. You brought up Stevie Wonder. So how did you guys start initially working with Stevie Wonder?
Stevie was one of the early fans in the industry of our music. I think it was Mervyn Warren who sent him a copy of our very first CD. Probably even before it was released, he sent it to him. I mean, he somehow got. Merv was that kind of guy. Man. Merv, if you want to talk about somebody who's a networker and who can get his foot in people's doors, he was that kind of guy. And Stevie, when the album came out, he went and bought like 300 or 400 copies of the CD and just passed them out to people in the industry. That's one thing. It's one thing if my cousin bought a few and was giving them out to his friends.
Right.
Imagine who Stevie Wonder's friends are in the industry. He's passing this thing out, and so we're like getting a buzz in the industry before our record really took off in record sales, because actual musicians and artists named
Yes.
artists had heard our stuff. They had gotten copies from Stevie Wonder. That's how much he loved our stuff. Like I said, there were times, man, when we would be performing in LA and he would just show up because he was a supporter of what we did. And so, of course, that led to us working together. He and Mark actually formed a really close friendship that they have to this day. So Mark can just call him up at any time and say, "Hey, man, we're working on this record. We need you to sing on this," and he'll do it. Because they developed that relationship.
How many? So you got? I know you guys recorded 1 or 2 songs with Stevie, or
more than that. And one of the Grammy awards that we won as an R&B duet with Take 6 and Stevie Wonder singing one of his songs.
How many Grammys does the group have?
The group has 10. And recently, Mark Kibble, the Marketech, just got one last year as an arranger for another project, different artists.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that is so long overdue. This guy invented the sound of Take 6. He should have gotten a Grammy just for that. 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love to see the way the industry really does have a respect for him. When we Quincy Jones was another one who became a supporter of what we do. I mean, he was like producing Michael Jackson records at the time, and he said 6 different people sent him our CD before he actually listened to it, and then went, "Oh wait, I need to work with these guys." And again, he and Mark have a close bond because Mark was the sound of the group. Quincy, when he had us in the studio, he would always turn to Mark. "Can you guys do blah 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 blah?" And Mark would go, "Yeah, give me just 10 minutes. I'll come up with it." And we would be recording stuff on the spot, because Quincy would hear something while we're in the studio and want to do it right then. And Mark was the only person in the group that could, at that time, man, just come up with something in the style of Take 6. Remember, this incredibly complex sound of 6 voices that was truly on the level of anything we did on our record. He could come up with something like that on the spot. When anybody wanted it. I had to go home and sit down at the piano for a minute. To figure out what I was going to do. I got better at it as we went along. But Mark,
it's like second nature.
It was. Again, if you're the guy that created the sound, man, it's like, I put it together, I can take it apart.
So who did you have? I mean, to be able to work with Stevie Wonder, Quincy Jones, and I mean, who out of those two or other, big time artists or musicians, who's the most memorable or who really stands out to you?
Yeah, who stands out? Well, obviously Stevie. I still remember a time when we were performing, I want to say it was for an award show. We were doing a song that Stevie recorded with us on one of our records. I think the song's called "Why I Feel This Way."
One of my favorite songs.
Now, that song was recorded with instruments. That's not an acapella song. We're standing on stage behind the curtain. The curtain's about to rise. And Stevie goes, Mark, come over here. Mark was like, what? I got this idea before. Let's do this acapella. Well, this now goes to the genius of our bass singer, because the bass was
the
actual electric bass on the recording. Our bass singer had never sung the bass to this because it wasn't an a cappella song where he needed to sing bass. Mark looks at Vinny and goes, well, the main thing that has to happen is you have to sing bass. Can you do that? without any rehearsal. You've never done that before. This is an instrumental track that he's asking us at a moment's notice for us to sing a cappella. Then he goes, and Steve is like, he can do it. Let's go. The curtain is starting to go up.
Yeah.
When we're still talking about if we're going to do this or not.
Yeah.
And Steve is like, nope, here we go.
I'm about to start singing.
That's one of the most memorable performances, man, with Stevie. But it's not so memorable because of Stevie, that particular moment. It really caused me to look at the guys I sing with and go, these guys are the real deal. These cats can. This is why we are who we are.
And so that performance went well.
It went well.
Yeah.
To this day, man, I look at Vinny and go, dude, I don't know how you pulled that off.
No.
See, even on the recording, I thought that he was singing that lower octave, but it was the actual bass.
It's bass guitar.
There were points in the recording where he would be singing it, but no, he had never sung the whole thing through as the only thing undergirding that arrangement as the bass.
So you guys went from a cappella to adding instruments on that album. Was that like a big deal? I remember when I was a kid in the car with Aunt Gail Hamilton Lusundo, and she popped in the CD, and that's when she was no longer the manager, and her and Gene Wilson, they were listening to the sound, and they were like, wow, they actually did this. They went from a cappella to,
Sure.
And it was like, they were wondering, will this work? And like, it wasn't like a question of were they hating on the group. They were really wondering, like, okay, you guys were cemented as an a cappella group.
Yeah.
Like, you set the standard, from Boys to Men, all these guys emulated you, but now you switched over to adding this new element. Like, would it work? And how was that? Was that like a big controversial thing? And of course you added Joey to the group and things like that.
Yeah, man. That, as I recall, man, that we did that, not knowing for sure if it was going to even be accepted. And even amongst the six of us, man, some of us were for it, some of us weren't. Like, man, I don't know. It's like we're trying to chase the success of other groups. See, here's the thing, man. Take Six. And this really this is really what was behind it, the logic behind adding instruments to what we do. We had a lot of success almost without radio. In the 80s and the 90s, man. I mean, before there was streaming and radio was everything. If you were going to sell a lot of records, you had to have presence on radio. We didn't get a lot of presence on radio. I mean, we would do all the promotional tours, go to radio stations, sing live in the studio, because we could do that, because we were a cappella for the staff. And the program manager, I'll never forget, and one of the stations said this in, I think it was in Chicago, big R&B station. He was like, man, I got your stuff in my car. I'll listen to your stuff nonstop, but I can't program it because it doesn't sound like everything else. Y'all need instruments because that's what we play. We don't play a cappella as much as I love you. And we started hearing that all the time. Man, if you all added instruments, man, you could probably get radio.
And getting radio meant what?
More record sales.
Okay, more record sales. Okay.
Yeah.
More notoriety.
More, yeah. I mean, we were looking at our first record went gold after like the first few years. Years later, it actually went on up and became platinum. And we were and the record label, the people who promoted our stuff were saying, man, this is incredible how y'all are doing this without radio.
Yeah.
So again, when you're hearing that in-house, you're hearing that from radio, what we heard as young guys was, we need to get radio, and they're telling us we gotta have instruments, man, to get radio.
Wow.
Then, instead of going gold or platinum. We can go triple platinum if we get radio.
Yeah.
That's what we were hearing all the time from a lot of segments. Even though some people, you still had people in your camp going, I don't know if that's right for you guys, though.
Yeah.
You might be, you know.
But y'all never
you're
did
looking
like
at the grass being green on the other side. And that's just not you guys.
Did y'all ever do a whole project with instrumental project, or was it like kind of half and half?
You know, once I realized, and by the time we made that transition, I'd become, you know, one of the major arrangers in the group. You know, I was really the second arranger behind Mark at this point. Once I realized this is the way we're going, I started to think in terms of how can we do it in such a way that our sound that people love as a cappella, there's still, you know, a presence there. So I would start doing, you know, arrangements and writing songs that had all the instrumentation, but then I might insert a breakdown where all the instruments drop out and Take Six just opens up to the sound that our fans knew us for. And then maybe come back out of that and the instruments come back. You know, or maybe start a song that was had an a cappella introduction before the instruments came in. I was constantly doing that kind of thing so that that record that was considered the first real instrumental record, and we called it Join the Band, to me, I did as much as I could to try to find a balance.
That was a good balance, though.
That was a good balance.
So yeah, I mean, so that's why, you know, there's songs like It's Gonna Rain on there, where you can hear places where the instruments drop out.
Yeah.
You know.
But the Ray Charles cut was totally a cappella, right?
And then we still kept, like, I think a couple of a cappella tunes on the.
But is that the one where Queen Latifah's on as well?
Queen Latifah was on
that's the Join the Band tune, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the first line of the chorus is Join the Band. So and that became the title of the whole album.
Yeah. Now I want to talk about right quick a couple of things, how streaming has impacted the music industry, and then I want to jump into your transition into academia, so to speak. But what's your take on that? How has streaming impacted music? You know, like people, you know, I don't know what was back in the day. It was Napster, wasn't it?
Sure.
But you know, because I used to hear a lot of musicians complain about, you know, they weren't getting paid, they weren't getting their royalties.
Right.
But now, is it better, or is it a benefit, or no?
I think it's cyclical. With every major technological advance, there's a disruption, and then the industry adjusts. They got to figure out new business models on how to handle it. When cassette tapes came out, everybody said that the music industry, record labels were going to go bankrupt because people can record on, you know, you couldn't record on vinyl or 8-track, but you could on cassette.
Yeah.
And if you sang in a church choir, people used to complain, artists used to complain if you sang in a church choir about one person buys a cassette, takes it to rehearsal, and everybody makes a copy of that cassette.
They dub it.
They dub that cassette. And so you got a choir of 30, 40 people, but only 1 or 2 people actually bought the cassette. So everybody was saying, man, this is the end of the industry, right? Funny story, a friend of mine told me this story about James Cleveland, who was a major black gospel artist in the 80s and 90s. But his whole audience was basically choir audiences, choirs. That was his audience. So he figured every time he released a record, he would wait a certain amount of time, and after he determined in his mind that it had been copied enough, he would go and have his own gold record printed. Or minted, and hang it on his wall and say, "This is how much I would have sold if everybody in all those choirs
had bought my."
That's funny. That's hilarious.
But the point is the same thing happened when Napster came along. You know, same thing happened when Apple came along, and somebody came famously came to Steve Jobs and said, "Aren't you concerned, man, that you are killing the music industry now with these iPods and iTunes?" And he famously responded, "I'm not in the music business. I'm in the hardware business." And everybody thought, "Well, man, this is the end of the the business again."
Labels, yeah.
You know, and so now we're going through that with streaming now, and you know, a lot of the business model, I think, is now in transition to figure out how to properly pay artists for their music. It's not there yet, but when will it ever be there? Like I said, this thing is cyclical. Every time it seems like everybody, all of the major players in the industry come to a consensus of how we're going to make sure everybody gets fairly compensated. The technology industry changes, and then we go through that whole thing again.
Speaking of compensation, before we jump into your transition, you guys were on Warner Brothers. Was that around the same time that Prince was having his issues with Warner Brothers? You know, he changed his name to Symbol, and he wanted out. And I know that you guys were on Warner Brothers, and I heard rumblings about, you know, how they paid the artists, and it was like a bad deal and things like that. Was that around the same time that you guys were on that label?
What Prince was, and yes, it was. What Prince was dealing with was Universal, though. It wasn't just Warner Brothers. It was the industry. The slice of the pie is so slim for the artists, and the way that the compensation is structured, man, record labels would just clean it up, and every time there is a restructuring, they make sure that they are taken care of way up front before they talk about what the artist is going to get. And they will lock you into these, you know, deals where you have to deliver like 7 to 8 albums before you can do anything else. If you don't, so what he was dealing with is a universal problem that still continues to this day. If you don't believe me, just ask Taylor Swift and all this junk that she's going through with Spotify. But her old record label that she left, where she doesn't own her masters. You know, they own everything, man.
And she's having to re-record her albums just to.
And it's interesting that she's even able to do that. A lot of artists, a lot of record labels don't even allow you to do that. You know, or they will build in, you have to wait 15 years before you can even re-record these songs. So, I mean, it you know, it could have been even worse for her than it is. But the whole thing is that Prince was drawing attention to was something that we all were dealing with, and that is how it does seem like, well, I shouldn't seem like, it is the gospel truth that artists don't get, I don't think, what they should be paid for the amount of work that they do. So
is that why a lot of artists now, I mean, they're trying to blow up on YouTube, or they go independent, and there's so many other resources now for an artist to either get exposure or sell their music, you know, SoundCloud and all these other things. You know, is that why you think, you know, there's been such a push? And
I think you know, there are pros and cons to the being part of a record label and being an independent artist and doing it yourself. Here's the thing, man. If you can get people to buy, if you can get exposure and get people to buy your stuff, eventually you don't have to sell that much to make just as much money that you would if you're assigned to a record label and you sold 500,000. You can sell 20,000 if you're making all the money and still make the same in the end that you would if you sold 500,000, but you got a record label that's getting the lion's share of it. Here's the trade-off, though. Major record labels, though, have a lot of major artists, and they will negotiate. They will negotiate with outlets and opportunity, people who offer opportunities like being on a talk show, getting on Jimmy Kimmel. You know, Jimmy Kimmel's people will call a major record label and say, we want, I don't know, Kendrick Lamar. Well, the label will say, okay, but we have this other small artist that nobody knows. We'll give you Kendrick, but put this other artist on next week. They have that kind of leverage that can work in your favor.
Right.
That happened, you know, with us all the time when we were first coming along, and nobody knew who we were. You know, we were everywhere. I mean, we back then the Arsenio Hall show was large, the Tonight Show, the Late Show. We got on all of those shows all the time because we were on a roster with Prince, Madonna, you know, the artists who were huge back then. They were like the top cream of the top. And the record label would use that leverage to say, if you want them, then let Take Six come on your show too. It'd be like, who is that?
Take Six.
You know. And it was funny because we knew, you could tell when that stuff was going on by the way you got treated when you were on the show. Like, you know, Madonna would be on the show and then they'd invite her over to sit on the bed, sit on the couch and ask her a question. Take Six would be on the show, they would have us sing and then go, thank you, and they would move on. And we'd be like, we don't sit on the couch to get interviewed. We'd get our little 3 minutes and we would be shuffled right out. We're like, man, was this a Prince deal?
Y'all did Oprah, right? Y'all on Oprah, wasn't you?
Yeah.
With Quincy Jones and Brian McKnight or something.
That's how we got on there. Because she wanted Quincy Jones. And Quincy said, yeah, I'm bringing Take Six. Oh, okay. But that stuff pays off. Because you remember it. Right? So, I mean, that's the trade-off. People, you know, we probably sold another 10,000 copies of records because folks learned who Take Six was because we were on Oprah because of Quincy Jones.
But I think it's so interesting to hear that because, you know, I look at these independent artists as entrepreneurs, you know.
They are.
And one of my good buddies, Eric Roberson, I don't know if you know who Eric Roberson is. He's a big R&B, soul, independent artist, been out for a minute. And you know, I used to have a company where I promoted concerts, and I started out promoting just independent artists. And he was one. PJ Morton is another one. And I ended up doing major artists. I did Layla Hathaway's tour, and Mark Kimball came to that concert here and joined on stage a couple of times. But I remember Eric Roberson telling me, and even PJ saying, man, I ain't really making no money, but I get to keep all the money. You know what I mean? And those guys are super talented, great, crazy talented musicians. But you're right. If they get to keep 100% of the pie, they don't have to sell as much volume.
Exactly.
And then over time, I think what they've been able to do is create those relationships as well and get that leverage. Or some of that leverage that they would have if they were on a super major label too. So,
and you know, the other thing that happens too, if you're really good at building your brand as an independent artist, the major record labels take notice. You know, and they'll come and say, you know what? They'll plop a huge advance on the table and say, we want to sign you, and we'll give you $2 million to sign with us. You know, but by that time, when you're there, you're in a better place to negotiate the terms of that agreement. You know, they'll say, we'll give you $2 million and just to sign with us and record 7 records, and you can say, I want $5 million and only 3 records. You know, you're in a position
because you got something going for you.
You already have leverage. You're already making 100%. Keeping 100% of that small pie, which is going to be the same as, you know, 6% of this big pie. I mean, that's how big a difference it can be. But it's like a lot of industry. It's like being a small company, a firm that starts to do really well, and then a conglomerate comes in and says, "Man, why don't you let us buy your company?" I know at one point there was a guy who built up a really good roster of artists. He was a booking agent. Had built up a great roster of artists. He was in the Christian music industry. A guy by the name of Charles Doris, still lives here in town. And William Morris, which is one of the largest booking agencies in the world, looked at his roster, set him straight, bought his firm, and left him in charge of his own firm. But they pulled him in, took care of him really nicely. But he did the hard work of building up a brand that had a lot of value. So it becomes at a certain point a question of, do I want to keep my own boutique thing, or do I want to build because there are some people, there are a lot of business people that's all they do. They build up companies and then sell them. Right. That's their MO. And at some point, as an independent artist, if you're doing really well, you get to a point where you can decide which way you want to go when the majors come and ask, hey, we can take care of you if you come with us. Yeah.
Well, I equate that to entrepreneurs who raise money from these venture capitalists or funds. And like a buddy of mine, he raised almost $6 million, but he has he now owns less than 10% of his business. You know what I mean? Because he has so many, major investors, and he did his Series A round, Series B, Series C, and it continues to dilute his equity in the business. Now, if somebody buys his company for, several $1 million, he probably come out fine, but he still has only 5-6% equity, but at the end of the day, he also probably would not be able to build, his platform and get the leverage that he has because of that money. So it's a give and take. What tell us why, or not necessarily why, but like the transition from being in the group, being in Take Six to academia, and what you're doing now.
Sure. I'm a person who's driven. I might not be a type A personality because I'm really kind of an introvert, but I am driven. And one of the things that was just important to me was education. So the whole time I was in Take Six, I was basically in school, except for maybe the last 10 years. Yeah.
And you were in Take Six for how long?
And I joined Take Six in '85. Well, before they even became Take Six, obviously. We got our record deal in '87. I was in the group from that point to 2011 is when I retired from it.
Okay.
Wow. Which is 20 plus
that's
years.
Almost 30 years.
Yeah. But I spent 10 years while I was in Take Six working on my doctorate. Something that would have probably, if I hadn't been in Take Six, would have taken me less than half that amount of time. Simply because that was important to me. I didn't have aspirations of going into academia. It was just something that was important to me, and that I could call my own. Everything that I did with Take Six was Take Six. It was a group effort, and I just wanted something that I could say, man, I did that on my own. So I was big in education. But what I found after I got finished my work, my doctoral studies, was I was being asked to give guest lectures here and there, different conferences, universities. And I would put together, a presentation, go in, boom. I thought, man, I'm kind of liking this. So I started to look into doing residencies, which would mean I could do something, go in, do some teaching for about a week or so, or maybe just a half a semester, just doing a little bit more. You know, I was just kind of dipping my toe in the water, and every time I did that, I found it very fulfilling.
Gotcha.
And so eventually, I said to my wife, I think that as I'm getting older, the rigor of travel is wearing on me. I think now that I realize I might like this academic thing piece. We should start looking at me joining a faculty somewhere and eventually transition out. Now, I didn't know when I was going to leave Tech 6 when I did that. So for about 7 years, I taught at MTSU full time while I was still in Tech 6. But over time, man, I was needing a substitute more and more often because I was choosing in the group, because I was choosing school more over Take 6, and the guy saw that and said, "Look, man, you looks like you're moving on." And the guy that was subbing for me had been subbing for 7 years, and he was like, "Look, is he gonna be here or not?
Game, coach.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you know."
He was a seventh man.
And so eventually we came to a point where I had to really choose, and I was ready. I was fine, man. I was ready to move on because I was so exhausted, man, from trying to basically hold down 2 jobs.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there would be times, man, where I would be on the road for a week, come home, and go get in my car at the airport and drive straight to school to teach a class. You know, before I even got to go home to see my wife and my son. So it was really, really exhausting, and I was burning out. I didn't have the creativity just wasn't coming together as quick as it used to for Take 6. You know, when it was time to do a record, I would be like, "Oh man, I gotta try to find some time to write some music." You know, it became that kind of arduous task for me to do both. And so eventually, after a long talk with my wife, we said, "Hey, you know what? Let's do this academic thing. It'll allow me to be home more. I can, you know, get a little more rested."
Yeah. You got kids as well? Y'all got kids?
We have a 1 grown son.
Okay.
Who is you know, making his own way now. You know, he's a journalist. He writes for the Nashville scene now.
Oh, cool. Nice.
And he's doing quite well as a journalist. That just happened this year. He said, "Dad, I'm actually getting a paycheck," and I'm thinking, "Wow, what am I going to do with all this?"
How old is he?
He's 30.
Okay.
just turned 30 this year.
Gotcha.
But I mean, but you know, to his credit, man, I mean, he paid his dues. You know, I mean, he got his degree from TSU, and he freelanced for years. I mean, this guy was like writing articles. He was like writing 2-3 articles a day. You know, for various outlets before he finally landed the gig at the Nashville scene. But yeah, I mean, but all of that, man, trying to pour into my son, be there for my wife, man, it was so hard to do, man, when I was trying to juggle, you know, those 2 seriously full-time jobs. I mean, I was trying to get tenured, you know, and I don't know if you know what trying to get tenure is like at a university setting. All of the stuff they require of you, it's almost like, you know, being hazed in a fraternity, man. Like, you want me to do what? You know, I would have senior faculty call me and say, "I need you to do something for me," and I'll go like, "Man, my plate is full." Well, these are the kinds of things you do if you want to make tenure, because I may be on the committee that decides whether you get tenure.
Well, they ask you on the committee.
And you never know when you're ready to go. to apply for tenure, who's going to be on that committee?
Yeah.
So you got to do everything everybody asks of you.
Sounds like regular labor to me.
Pretty much.
So yeah, I mean,
you applied for tenure.
So I got tenure. I went up for tenure early. You know, the Take Six, of course, the Take Six experience played a heavy role in that. You know,
Sure, absolutely.
That kind of bringing that kind of notoriety to the school played a part in that. But I still had to do all of the hard stuff, man. I had to serve on everybody's committee. I had to make sure my teaching was excellent. I had to make sure I was serving on community boards, directorships. You know, because that's the thing. There are three pieces that most schools require you to excel at, and that they review when you come up for promotion and or tenure. Teaching, your creative activity or research. For me, I had that going in spades with Take Six. And then what they call service. Service to the university, that's serving on all kinds of committees, you know, that keep the machine going, curriculum committees and things like that. And then service in the community as well. All those are the three pieces, man. And so I'm trying to do all of that.
Yeah.
While still, you know, holding my own in Take Six, man, and it became too much.
So tenure means that they can't fire you.
Technically, that's what it means.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people, you know, they can make your life hard without firing you, so that you just decide, hey,
quit.
I gotta go. I can't take this. You know, I've seen people basically get taken down from an administrative position and say, well, you have tenure, we can't fire you. So, but we don't want you doing this anymore. But you can still teach. You know, after you've been in a leadership role, it's like, do I want to do that or not? You know, I mean that's a vote of no confidence in what I'm doing. You know, so I can do things, you know, that make your life hard. But technically, you're supposed to be able to be set until you're ready to retire.
Yeah. So you teach music theory.
I teach a variety of things.
Okay.
Which is kind of unusual. Usually you teach in a specific area within the School of Music. So there is a music theory faculty that I'm a part of. That's what my degree is in. My terminal degree is in music theory. So I do teach, I teach every semester a couple of classes in music theory. But because of my experience with Take Six, I also direct a vocal jazz ensemble.
Oh, cool.
Which is considered, you know, part of another area of faculty, you know, ensemble faculty, you know. So yeah, I direct this vocal jazz ensemble that is, I'm also always trying to recruit for, you know. This is another thing.
How many folks are in the ensemble?
It can vary, man. Before the pandemic, I had as many as 21 in the group, but I usually would only have no more than 12 or 13 actual principals that actually sang. But there would be more in the ensemble that I would call alternates. That I thought, you know, we can develop. It's an audition only group. So if I didn't feel like they were good enough to be a principal, but I saw that with a little work they could get there, I'd make them an alternate. Once the pandemic hit, man, we missed an entire semester. When we came back, we still had all of these COVID restrictions that made it really tough. I only had in last fall, I only had 6 people. It grew to 9 this past semester, and you know, I got my director on my back saying, "You need to get those numbers back up." You know, I'm trying. You know, so again, and then when I first got to MTSU, I developed a course on the history of Black gospel music as an elective course, so because it's technically a music history course, that puts me on the music history and musicology faculty now. the people who teach all of the music history courses. So again, I kind of get spread out across a lot of different areas within the School of Music, just based on the variety of courses that I teach.
Yeah. So being that you were a member in Take 6, did people try to slide you a demo or shoot you their music all the time?
Yeah.
I would think, especially college students, especially in Music City.
Not just college students, but college students' parents would be sending demos via their kids.
Check that out.
For me to check out, or they got a song that Take 6 has to record. I have faculty members, passing me their demos, or shooting me a link to their website so I could check out their music. Like I could really make it happen for them.
Hey, Quincy Jones, man. Right. Send it to him.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, people. I guess it doesn't hurt to ask.
Oh, no question. You gotta get in the door somehow, huh?
Yeah, and 9 out of 10 times it's just, But I try to be nice and listen to everybody's stuff, man.
Oh, really?
Wow. And even if I'll be honest with them and say, I don't think there's anything I can do with this. I'd like to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, but
he's so nice about it.
But here's the funny thing about man, about growing older. When I first started teaching at MTSU 17 years ago, students would come up to me about halfway through the semester and say, I didn't know you were famous. My mom told me who you were. She's a huge fan. Would you sign this CD for my mom? She said, I hate to have to do this, but my mom wants you to sign her CD. Like, oh, no problem. Now, same thing still happens, except now they go, my granddaughter is a huge fan. She grew up on your music. I'm like, wait, no, your grandmother did not grow up on my music. I am insulted by that, and you better check yourself if you want an A in this class. You take that back to you. No, I don't do that. But that is exactly what happens to me now, man. So all I have to say to you guys, man, keep living. Keep doing what you're doing, get successful, and you'll have people coming up to you whose grandmothers have crushes on you.
How old are you?
I'm 58.
Oh my goodness.
I'll be 59 this year.
That's a trip, man.
So you know what I'm doing now. I don't mind telling you. I go to all of the retirement planning workshops on campus because I'm like, okay.
Oh, you're the man in there. Huh? Okay,
I only want to do this for so many more years now. That's where my mind is starting to go to now, and I'm having meetings with my retirement advisor who's telling me, you have to save a lot more if you want to retire when you think you will retire, or just keep working, buddy.
Yeah, just keep working. So what is next for you though? What do you think will be the next move for you?
My bucket list really is I think 2 or 3 books that I really want to dig into. I've never written a book, the research that I did for my doctoral studies was in the area of Black gospel quartet singing. And I really want to go back and actually do some follow-up work there and write a book that features actually transcriptions of quartet performances. Because the quartet tradition is an oral tradition. You don't read music. It's all by rote. And I did a lot of transcriptions for my doctoral work of quartet performances that I saw as precursors to what Take 6 does. That was the connection for me. And to this day, you can't find printed scores of Black Gospel Quartet performances.
That's good.
So that's one thing I really am interested in doing, man. Creating a book of that, and then write an article about how it's put together. Because again, I'm still a music theorist at heart too. Take it apart, put it back together, for the reader. So that's one of the things I really want to do. I also want to write a devotional.
Oh wow.
Or devotional writings, just that come from my daily walk with the Lord. That's another thing that I want to do as well. So those are some things that I, writing, doing that kind of writing. I also want to build my own publishing catalog up. I really moved more into print publishing. I have a relationship with two publishing sheet music publishing entities. One that publishes my works for choirs, mostly kind of tends more to the classical music audience. But then I also do a lot of vocal jazz stuff. And I write a lot of arrangements for my vocal jazz ensemble at MTSU. And I'm finding that other high school choir directors and college directors of vocal jazz ensembles are interested in those arrangements. So I also have a relationship with another publisher that is primarily targeting that audience. So I really want to do a lot more writing, music writing as well, in that arena. And I still have my own, little cottage industry, where folk from all over the world, man, are constantly contacting me directly for my arrangements, and so I make a little extra money that way too by selling my own arrangements, and folk, commissioning sometimes works from me, like 2016. The Nashville Symphony and the Met Singers commissioned the work that I did for their annual Let Freedom Sing concert. And so I still compose and arrange as well. I really want to have more time to do even more of that as well.
No, you got a lot on your plate now, but the future looks bright, and I can tell when you talk about it, you kind of glow. No, seriously. I mean, there's a lot to look forward to. Well, I definitely appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming in and meeting us up here, Dr. Cedric Dent. I think we had a great conversation, and our goal is always is for people to have some practical takeaways from our conversation, and I think we got that today. No matter what industry somebody's in, I think the way you spoke about your journey and especially like the competitive advantages, for example, that Take 6 had, and like we can relate that to several different verticals or several different businesses. So hopefully, we got some practical takeaways. So if you're listening, if you're watching, be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe on YouTube, follow us on social media, and reach out, comment, and holler at us and let us know, and give a shout out. Make sure you follow. You on social media? You said you're on Facebook, right?
I am on Facebook.
Okay. Well, Facebook's a little different than like Instagram or Twitter. You're probably very selective about who.
I've been on there for years, man. I still only have a few. When I say few, I still only have. I'm just now getting close to having 2,000 friends.
Okay.
After being on there for 10 years.
Okay. Well, see if Dr. Dent will accept your friendship request. On Facebook. Well, be sure to look out for. Hopefully, in the future we see some things that you're working on and publishing. Whether it's musically or book wise, like you mentioned. And we appreciate you, man.
Thank you, man.
Yes, sir.
Enjoyed it.
All right.
Oh, by the way.
Interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
This podcast, y'all, is sponsored by Comcast Business. I almost forgot, okay? I almost forgot to say.
That's not something you want to forget.
You gotta say the sponsor.
That we are sponsoring, or this episode is sponsored by Comcast Business. and you know that MyTech Partners is a solutions provider for a Comcast business. And we provide internet, phone, and TV service to businesses nationwide. So if you need to upgrade your bandwidth in your business, if you need to get a failover, so that when you have an outage, something else kicks in place so your business can still run efficiently, reach out to us. We can source different options through Comcast Business and make sure you're taken care of. So reach out to us at mytechpartners.com, or you can go to TechDontSleep.com too. And all right, appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Just be smooth.
Okay.
Alright, it's recording on those two.
Okay, so we're gonna count down from 3 and I'll clap.
Y'all already use the bathroom. Y'all ain't gotta go to the restaurant. I gotta step out.
Okay, y'all ready?
Yeah.
Okay, 3, 2.
What?
I did what anytime we
Oh, you good. You good. Let's keep rolling.